Hi everybody and welcome to the webinar. I will play a recording by our TISAX lead auditor Laura Flanagan. Then I will invite you to participate in a few 1-minute polls, which will be followed by a question and answer session. Andre Sackel from our Germany office and I will be available to take the questions from you. In the meantime, please feel free to use the chat feature to send questions or comments. Let's begin.
And welcome to the DQS TISAX What and Why webinar. We will begin with a couple of introductions and then we'll jump into the main topic. For those of you that are not familiar with DQS, we are one of the leading certification bodies for management systems in the world. We operate 85 offices in 60 countries to serve our clients' global needs. With over 2,500 auditors and 65,000 certification locations that span 130 countries, we are here for the client wherever they may be. Our services are spread across many major segments, including quality, medical, aerospace, automotive, sustainability, and of course, information security, as well as integrated management assessments. We offer a wide variety of standards that we are expanding every year, and you can learn more about going to our website at www.dqsglobal.com for more information, white papers, brochures, as well as link to our recorded webinars. I'm also pleased to announce that the DQS has recently added a new company to the portfolio, DQS Cybersecurity Inc., or CSI, and is a C3PAO candidate pending assessment with the CMMC Accreditation Board. Now let's review our webinar abstract. As an implementer, you may spend much time reviewing, studying, and researching information to determine which of the information security standards is right for your organization. The answer is, it depends. Where ISO 27001 is considered the benchmark for information security management systems, for the Department of Defense, industrial base may require CMMC model certification focused on the information security surrounding FCI and CUI data, while in automotive, many original equipment manufacturers tend to require the TISAX label, which covers many aspects of ISO 27001, plus additional controls key for the automotive industry. This webinar is aimed to provide you an overview of TISAX, why and what. The why focuses on not only information security, but also the OEM needs based on what product and or services that you provide, while the what will cover the aspects of ISO 27001 and other key standards and discuss the audit process and model. For this webinar, we'll include topics such as understanding the TISAX VDA ISA Model 5.0.4, including catalog items and maturity level, overview of the TISAX process itself, and the summary of the TISAX materials available on the ENX website, and keys to getting started with TISAX. I am Laura Flanagan, and I am the lead auditor as well as a lean and CMMC manager. I've been with DQS 2 years, and prior to that, 26 years in the automotive industry, and with a broad range of activities, including IT, operations, program management, quality, continuous improvement, HR, and EHS. And with the last 5 years in global IT, I'm also a lead auditor for 27001 and TISAX, along with other harmonized standards. Joining me today is Sandeep Powder. He is our lead auditor and program manager for IT audits at DQS. Sandeep has over 2 decades of experience in telecom and IT security management, ISO 27001 internal and external audits, gap assessments for data privacy standards, and is in the process of being approved for TISAX lead auditor. So now let's begin with an introduction to TISAX. Before we get started, maybe a few key definitions to be familiar with. TISAX is an acronym that stands for the Trusted Information Security Assessment Exchange. The VDA ISA is the Verband der Automotive Industrie VDA Information Security Assessment, which is the German Association of the Automotive Industry, or VDA, and is a German interest group of the German automotive industry for both manufacturers and component suppliers. The term OEM stands for Original Equipment Manufacturer. ENX is an association and organization consisting of those automotive manufacturers, suppliers, and 4 national automotive associations. And the aim of that organization is to enable and simplify secure, trustworthy collaboration over industrial value-added networks. And The term IP stands for intellectual property. So now when we talk about what is TISAX and why consider it, 5 things to keep in mind. First is recognition and exchange. TISAX is an assessment and exchange mechanism for the information security of enterprises and allows recognition of assessment results among the participants. Number 2, to protect sensitive data. If you want to process sensitive information from your customers or evaluate the information security of your own suppliers, TISAX supports you in reducing efforts. 3, mutually accepted. TISAX enables that audit providers offer mutually accepted assessments based on the VDA ISA catalog in competition. This supports standardized assessment results which are accepted by other participants throughout the industry. Number 4, homogeneous assessment. A TISAX certification or label is required and recognized by all VDA members and OEMs such as Audi, Volkswagen, and BMW. The advantages of the TISAX procedure includes relevant assessment criteria, homogeneous assessment quality, and a high level of transparency. And last but certainly not least, number 5, trustworthy and collaboration. The aim of an ENX is to enable and simplify secure, trustworthy collaboration over industry value networks. This slide talks about the system approach overview, which visualizes that the ENX triangle of governance. Each organization has to register themselves to be a participant and is free to choose their role as information consumer or information contributor. The 2 roles, information consumer, receives information, for example, an OEM, and an information contributor, such as a supplier, undergoes the assessment and makes information available to another TISAX participant. As mentioned in the previous slide, there's a group of organizations that are consumers and may be a part of the organization driving the need for TISAX. It began with a small group of OEMs and has since grown to include many supply-based partners. Information security management systems focus on the protection of confidentiality, integrity, and availability, or CIA. Not unlike ISO 27001, however, for the automotive industries, these principles are taken into account and adds the needs for high and very high protection needs. So in essence, we're going beyond CIA and reviewing the protection needs and versus the protection levels as identified by the particular industry. Now that we are done with the academic response, let's review a more real-life example that includes the anatomy of an automobile and take in one of the key systems and walk through a day in the life of the supply chain for that component. As you know, it is this technological advances, technical capabilities, and the state-of-the-art features that separate market leaders from market followers, and the need for information security and data protection across the vast global automotive supply chain has never been greater. To better understand why an OEM or supply chain partner may require TISAX, let's explore the anatomy of the automobile with all the electronic devices. This slide here, this image from electronic car today and tomorrow, represents the main systems within a vehicle. Now picture each of these components that make up the system provided to the OEM and their global supply chain. We will just take one of these 47 systems and drill down to a day in the life of and a simplified view of what happens with that component. In the day in the life of a mechatronic device, using that transmission control device or shifter for the supply chain example, it may be global. As the global economy continues to expand more and more and automotive components have become global commodities with global teams working and sharing information across the internet. The figure below provides a simplified representation of a global collaboration of a mechatronic device. Oftentimes, customers, suppliers, engineering, and sub-tiers can be scattered across the planet. The map shows these connections. Notice the little cloud attached to each. This represents the Internet of Things in connection with the data exchange. Sensitive data, data that may need protection or high or very high protection every step of the way. Now envision all the sensitive, confidential, proprietary data that is passing between all these organizations throughout the life cycle of a program, which can be up to 5 to 9 years. Now, if we overlay each participant's IT risk pyramids and tie back to the number of devices, data transfers, etc., you can really see the potential failure modes, and the scope of the protection needs. The risk pyramid on the left represents the layers to get to the data or the network. The risk pyramid on the right is the layers of protection and security. Please note that the people or users are the broadest line of defense, but also our largest potential weakness. Remember, ISO 27001 is protecting your data, while TISAX is about protecting their data. You cannot protect their data if you do not have your own data protected. The VDA began with the requirements of key Tier 1 suppliers over the past couple of years, and now the VDA now requires TISAX for its suppliers moving from the Tier 1 level through to Tier 2 and Tier 3 and beyond. Please note this is a very similar approach to the Department of Defense is taken with regards to this CMMC and its supply base to be certified by 2025. Now let's review the TISAX VDA ISA 5.04 model itself, the basis for the TISAX assessment. Unlike other standards that you have to purchase, the ENX portal has downloadable documents free of charge for the model and the participant handbook. We recommend that you download and begin to review. More on this a little later in the presentation. Again, the assessment is based on that 5.04 model, which is an Excel document or catalog featuring several tabs, including welcome, cover, maturity level explanations, definitions, and the three key areas for assessment, which are number 1, information security, number 2, prototype protection, and number 3, data protection. Please note that the Information Security tab includes all the basic controls based on the ISO 27001. The control questions themselves are formulated as questions. The objective of the respective control and the requirements for achieving it is listed and according to designated columns. So of the 41 elements that are included in this section, 37 are directly aligned with ISO 27001. The assessment schema consists of now 3 label levels with a hybrid 2.5 level. For all level 1 requirements, these are self-assessments. If the organization is required to be a level 2, then the information security and in-scope data protection can be done remotely and through a plausibility check. However, if prototype protection is required by our customer for a level 2 and above, all of these assessments must be on site. If the organization is required to be a level 2.5, then the information security and data security can be remote, but prototype again must be on site. If the organization is required to be a level 3, then an on-site with interview is required. For maturity levels, not label levels, they range from 0 to 5, with 3 being the established and 5 being optimizing. Within the catalog on the maturity levels, the tab explains that what are the criteria that must be met and satisfied for that element to meet each label. So now that we have reviewed the maturity level tab, let's take a look at the layout of the VDA ISA 5.04 catalog questions with the Information Security Assessment tab. At the far left is the ISA element number. Next is the maturity level that is determined through the assessment to the criteria that is in the maturity level tab that we just touched on. The next 3 columns is for the organization to document the implementation description, how you are fulfilling the requirements. Number 2, the reference documents, where is this information? And 3, findings and results, what evidence you have. The next 2 columns define the control question and objective description, overview of what is expected. Following the objective, the next 2 columns include the must and should requirements. The must ones must be satisfied, and the should must be satisfied unless a justified exclusion is presented. For the high and very high requirements, if there are any listed here, they also are required and must be fulfilled. The next columns address the protection objectives for categories that you may have seen in the ISO 27001, CIA, confidentiality, integrity, and availability. And the reference to the other standards, it will show which standards it references. So just note of the 41 elements, with 37 of them reference ISO 27001, while the remaining 4 are from ISO 2717. Now let's discuss the prototype section. If the client's customer requires prototype protection and it's to be in scope, there are 4 categories that will direct which chapters of the requirements that are applicable. So for example, if the organization provides prototype for parts and components, chapters 8.1, 8.2, and 8.3 are in scope. While if the organization handles test vehicles, chapters 8.2, 8.3, and 8.4 are applicable. Scoping, levels, what's in scope for prototype and data is always dictated by the customer. And finally, the last section is data protection. If it's in scope, then all 4 chapters of the data protection tab are required. The next tab is the results from ISA 5, that is the current model. The workbook also includes the ISA 4 from a comparison to the original model. As the results are identified in the applicable tabs, the result populates a summary and then updates the radar/spider charts and provides an overall summary score and visual aid to see which areas need improvement and what areas may be cut back to free up resources on the gaps. Now that we have covered what's in the model, let's take a step back and look at the overall TISAX process. These process diagrams are directly out of the TISAX Handbook, section 5.4.11, and provide a good visual of the steps. Let's cover the highlights. Please note, the first orange box is critical, and it's the assessment preparation. This is your self-assessment and gap analysis. It must be completed prior to an assessment. Next, the initial assessment takes place jointly, and that is when the clock starts. So again, it is key to close your gaps prior to this step, to allow yourself the time limits post-assessment to address any items that result from the audit not previously considered. If nonconformities are found, then action plans are required. Then if okay, then a temporary label may be assigned, but only after corrective actions are complete and a follow-up assessment conformity. If yes, then the label may be issued. The total duration of the time from the initial assessment and the final assessment confirmation must not exceed 9 months. Note, there are 4 types of findings. There are major, minor, observations, and rooms for improvement. These are documented in section 5.45 about conformity within the handbook. This slide shows the sequence in a different form with the inclusion of registration and maintenance requirement that is every 3 years. The process steps talk about number 1, complete your self-assessment and close your gaps. 2, then register with TISAX. 3, clarification and contracting. 4, preparing the assessment. 5, conducting the initial assessment. 6, review of corrective action plans. 7, review of corrective action implementation. And closing, and then getting the label. Unlike many standards, the TISAX VDA ISA documents are free and available on the ENX portal for download. Now we'll cover some of those materials available. Both the handbook in a .pdf version and the VDA ISA in a .xlsx are available to download for free from the ENX portal, address shown here. Under the TISAX header, drop down to the downloads and the list will appear. The handbook is the first item listed and the VDA ISA is the next. When you are ready, after your self-assessment and ready for assessment to begin, you can go to the ENX portal, again, the TISAX header, and then select Providers from the drop-down. DQS is accredited through our sister company, DQS BIT, which coordinates quotes and audits with all of our other locations. Many of our clients have a global footprint and requires global collaboration. Any questions regarding this part of the process can be directed for our very own Ravi Maywell in sales. And to kind of wrap us up, let's review some of the keys to getting started with TISAX. Here are some keys to get started. Step 1, start with downloading and reviewing the participant handbook. Step 2, discuss with your customers what levels and what requirements are expected, such as prototype and/or data protection. Step 3, download the VDA ISA 5.0.4 model and complete your self-assessment. Use this to, number 1, verify and organize your current processes and procedure documentation to the requirements. 2, review for any gaps that may remain. Number 3, when ready, proceed to the ENX portal and begin the registration process. And number 4, remember the self-assessment is required for all levels and for level 2 or higher is a prerequisite for review prior to an assessment. It is not optional. Refer to section 5.2 of the handbook for additional details. Once you have that self-assessment, you begin by registering. Details can be found in section 4 of the handbook. The participant initiates the process through the ENX portal by registering and completing scoping requirements. Once step 1 is complete, next we move to step 2. Note from section 5.4.6, The self-assessment will be used by the auditor to plan the assessment procedure. And after the assessment, and if any nonconformity findings have been resolved, then step 3 is to post the results in the TISAX database that is visible to the public under the Network tab in the yellow pages. Thank you for joining us today. Please visit www.dqsglobal.com for this recorded webinar. Will be posted and available. And to review any other additional resources, please let us know how we can serve you. If you have any questions regarding sales and services, you can contact Ravi Maywell, is our sales manager in IT sector. His contact number is 571-232-4930, or he can be found via email at ravi.maywell@dqsus.com. Thank you and have a great day.
Thank you, everybody. Now I'll request a few minutes of your time to participate in 3 poll questions. These questions and your participation helps us set up the future webinars and make them more useful to you. So here's the first one. Okay, so the poll question is that based on your current ISMS activities, is your organization going to be seeking the TISAX label? Right, we have about half of the people who participated in this. I will end this poll and share the results with you. So based on the responses, about 54% of the participants said that they will be seeking the TISAX label. This helps us in figuring out the next webinar, gather questions from you, and maybe hope to answer those next time. The second of the 3 polls is if TISAX is on your radar, have you reviewed the handbook and completed a self-assessment? This helps us figuring out at what stage of your preparation you are in and how to help you move forward. All right, it's been a minute, so I will share the results. Most of the participants have not completed a self-assessment, so just like Laura mentioned, please review the handbook and complete the self-assessment guided by ENX. And if you have any questions for the process, then any of us, Ravi, Andre, Laura, or I, are available to answer your questions via email or setting up meetings with you. I'll go to the third and the last question of the poll, and then we can move to the question and answer sessions. The third poll is about your interest in having a private TISAX workshop, so we can plan that in the future. Okay, so just over 50% of the participants are interested in a TISAX workshop, so we will begin work on that, and we will announce the registration soon. Now we can move to the question and answer session of this webinar. Andre and I are available here to take your questions. Please feel free to post your questions in the chat.
Hello, everybody. To Sandeep, do I use the microphone or should I?
Hi, Andre. So far we don't have any questions in the chat or directly on the voice. So I'm waiting for participants to come up with questions, and then we can take those questions.
Okay, fair enough.
Ravi wanted me to share his email address again in the chat so that you can copy it. I'm posting it in the chat for everybody. So we have a question from DK from our India office. If there is a multi-site organization having 5+ locations, who would be the main applicant?
It's always the headquarter, EK. So they need to have a centralized management system, which implemented also in headquarter or at a location who gives all the requirements to the other locations. So that will be the main location then.
Andre, we have another question from James. Are there any consulting services available to assist with the gap assessment and corrective actions?
it's quite hard to talk to me for the market in US, but there are for sure a few companies which provide such kind of a service. But for example, DQS is also allowed to do a gap analysis and provide you with the results. We are not allowed to consult you with the results and tell you what exactly you have to implement if there is a gap, but we can show you the gap. Does it make sense?
Yeah, James is posting that that answered his question, and thank you, Andre. So just a reminder that if you think of any questions, please post them in the chat, or if you have questions in the future, I have shared Ravi's email address over here, so you can send questions to Ravi via email. DK is asking if the presentation will be shared. So please visit dqsglobal.com and see the TISAX page. We will have a recording of this presentation available soon after the conclusion of this meeting.
Yes, Cindy, the recording actually goes on our YouTube page, and I will share the link for that for everyone on this call when it is set up.
Oh, thank you, Sarah.
And actually, while we're waiting for more questions, I just wanted to go ahead and let everyone know our next webinar will be in, I believe it's 2 weeks, and it will be on CMMC. I'm going to include in the chat a link to the registration if anyone is interested.
So it looks like we are not getting any further questions at this point. So I would like to take a moment to thank the DQS team for making this webinar a success, and all the participants for joining and asking all these questions. Please feel free to email us or contact us via phone numbers so that we can answer your questions and direct you to the information on our website. Thank you very much again, and have a great day.